Hey everybody, it's Babos. This is the day after Thanksgiving. I hope all of you are feeling well, El Tryptophan feelings of joy and gratitude. And hope you all had a nice Thanksgiving yesterday. Today we're talking about gratitude. We're just going to have a conversation, a free-form kind of conversation about what we're grateful for. And I will acknowledge that this is because many of us are feeling a little shell-shocked by things that are going on in the world and in our country. So uh, my belief is that art and theater are very nurturing places that we can all turn to when we are feeling a little bit lost, which many of us are feeling right now. I want to talk a little bit about the healing powers of art. Um, I've said this before, but I actually really believe this so firmly. Politics is where people go to fight, and art is where people come together to listen. I want to really put our focus as much as possible on what we can do as a community and as individual artists to feel empowered and feel like we can have a world that is acceptable for for us um, without. I try very hard not to be judgmental of the other side, politically the other side. This is not the place I want to come and fight. I just want to talk about hoping that we can all at least find some solace and comfort and some power in art. And that's why I put together this lineup of people who happen to be my board members. And I'm going to bring them in, and I'm going to spotlight them. So the rest of you who are here in the room, by the way, you can keep your cameras on. You don't have to turn them off. I'm now I've become very fond of spotlighting, although I'm not really good at it, but I can do it. So I'm going to introduce you to Board Chair Sandy Silverberg and board members Margot Astrachan, Patrick Blake, who's been a board member for many, many years and has been very much involved in the growth of TRU, and Scott Sickles. So there we are. So this is me and my pals, Sandy, Margot, Patrick, Scott, board members and also friends, which is the way I think life should be. I think one thing I do want to say is like in theater or in anything else, uh, let's all make it a point and let's all make it a resolution to work with people that we enjoy being with, and work with people that we love and people that we admire, and even people that are smarter than us. So that also is a good thing as well. Sandy, let's just have you guys talk about. I had the room talk about things that they're grateful for. Um, we'll get to we'll try to focus in on the aspects of gratitude and things that we can really share with other people. But for yourself, what are you grateful for right now?
Well, as all my board members and friends know, I just turned 70, and 15 years ago, I showed up in New York City with everything that I owned in my car and $40,000 in debt. And so I am so grateful to be here, to be alive, to be giving, and to be surrounded by family and friends. And I guess that sums it up.
Well, that's eloquent and touching. Um, Margot, we've known each other a long, long time. Thank you for being part of my life. Thank you for being part of True. What are you grateful for, and what's going on for you right now?
Well, first of all, I'm grateful to you because when I met you 30 years ago, I was sort of clueless as to what a producer did or how to get started. I had been asked by a London theater to be their American artistic director and co-producer, and I didn't know anything. and you took me by the hand essentially. So I'm grateful for you. That's for
I have to
starters.
tell you, I had no idea you didn't know anything. I had no idea. Interesting fun fact, Margot and I met at the first, or I think it was the first or the second, was it the first New York Fringe Festival town hall?
Yeah,
It was the first time, yeah. It was we were there the first year that the New
yeah.
York Fringe Festival about to launch, and we missed them. They're not doing it anymore, but they made their mark. They certainly made their mark.
They sure did. They sure did. And um, so I came from being a journalist and a performer, and I had to learn on my feet, how to do this. And you were enormously helpful. And I must say, too, I'm grateful for TRU now because with the Broadway League having discontinued the Commercial Theater Institute, although they're trying now to bring it a little bit back, you are the only one really teaching people how to do this work, how to bring things from the page to the stage, essentially. So I'm grateful for you, Bob,
Well, thank you so much.
the board, too.
And there's so much I didn't know about you when I met you. I thought you like were a big Broadway producer. It's like, oh my God. I'm stunned. And
Well, I mean, I was representing a London theater and they had confidence in me, but believe me, I was scared to death.
you didn't show it at all. And the other thing I didn't learn about you for years was I didn't know that you were a cabaret singer at one point, or
Yes.
you are a cabaret performer. If anybody can get you up on that stage again.
No.
Okay. Next up, Patrick Blake. You were brought into my life by Cheryl Weisenfeld, who's one of my dear, dear, dear friends. And you have been such an important part of TRU for many, many years, and you've been really supportive. And I want you to know I'm grateful for you as well. So Patrick, what's your story?
Um, well, I'm still friends with Cheryl, even though she introduced me to TRU, and I'm grateful for that. Um, and I was just thinking that had I been alive almost 100 years ago in 1923, 24, I would have been thankful for seeing history being made in theater with the opening of Showboat, the merging of popular music and theater music. And today I'm thankful for the same reason with Hamilton. I can see theater music becoming more merged with popular music. And that I'm grateful for, to be at the beginning of a new history in theater.
And for perspective, Patrick is the founding artistic director of a company called Rhymes Over Beats, which is a hip hop collective, you call it?
Yes, a collective. I wanted to go back to the idea of the 30s and all of those theater groups that were just collectives rather than member organized and, with rules and things like that. It was just people who came together because they had a common goal and stopped being together when that goal was met, or they didn't have one anymore. So that's where I thought it was thinking of it as a collective.
Well, and by the way, for those of you who don't know, you're located now in San Francisco.
Yep.
And has the weather gotten any better?
It stopped raining.
Hallelujah.
Little victories.
Yes.
Scott Sickles. Now, Scott Sickles and I have had two lives together. The first one was part of the workshop theater, where you actually were one of the artistic directors or one of the.
Yeah.
Were you a founding member of the workshop?
Oh God, no, no. That was founded in 1994. I didn't join until 99. And I was on an artistic directorial team around 2004 when the AD Tony Sportiello left, and then from 2009 to 2014, I was the solo artistic director.
So that's how we originally knew each other from.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think so. Yeah, yeah.
And then how did how did
Or did we know
how
each
did I
other
lure
from
you
the
onto the
old
board?
Broadway brunch club? Is that a possibility?
Oh, the Broadway Brunch Club. I forgot about that. Yes,
Yeah, yeah, from the 90s, because I'm like, no, because I think we know each other actually before because like it was like 1998, so it's been more than 25 years that we've been in each other's orbits, and there apparently is no breaking this curse. So here we are.
here we are
Here we are. I blame
together.
Cheryl Davis.
I
We
was
all
going
have
to say
Cheryl that
Cheryl
we
Davis
do
has
this work
something to do with
together.
that. I know.
Yes, yeah, that's how I met Cheryl as well. So yeah.
I have another board member in the room. Uh, Janelle, do you want to come on board here?
Sure. I'm already on board.
Yeah. Turn your camera on so I can actually bring you on.
Okay, so I may have a problem doing that because I'm actually in Trinidad and the
Oh,
Wi-Fi is really I'm pressing my luck by even coming on here. So I don't want
okay.
it to go out on us.
We won't do that then. That's okay. Um, so I I can't not mention politics here, but how do we as a community, first of all, do you disagree or agree that I don't see um, the election as being particularly favorable towards the arts, and I don't anticipate a lot of support coming from our government. And what do you think? I mean, are we safe? Are we safe in New York? Are we going to have our life as we know it here in New York? Or do you think there's a possibility that things are going to be challenging us? Anyone want to take that?
The states are going to have to step up, and some of them will and some of them won't, is what's going to happen.
So what we're hoping for is that the states will maintain the integrity of their values to the extent that they are able to, with the understanding that there isn't a single state in this country that has 100% agreement on anything. So we're always faced with the we're always faced with the realization that when we are feeling just depressed and horrible about things, there are other people that are feeling joyous and are celebrating.
Mhm.
Um, there are things I'm praying will will not happen. I'm praying that there won't be a federal law prohibiting women's rights. I'm praying for that, and I know that there are other people that are praying the opposite of that. Um, what 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 can art do to help this situation? How can we maintain our values that as we know them here in New York? Any thoughts?
Well, I just I'll try to not go on too many tangents because the unmedicated ADHD is quite a stunner, and that's a big topic. But the I mean, as a playwright and as someone who is inherently a catastrophist, this has been a very interesting 8 years. You know, I immediately can look at any situation, see the worst case scenario, and the dramatist part of me figures out that worst case scenario and how to make it the best case scenario, and see how it can spiral down from that. I in both art and life, and like when you're doing it for art, that can be a good thing because it's an outlet for rage. I've a lot of people in the past 8 years have written a lot of very angry things in response to the rise of American fascism. The thing that I mean, there are concerns I have. I have a play of mine about E.M. Forster that's supposed to go up in Missouri next year. And I'm very curious to see if that's going to be on a state or federal level allowed. It's a gay love story because it's E.M. Forster. And it's just like, to what extent is there going to be, that level of artistic censorship? Are you allowed to present plays about queer characters? And maybe not in Missouri. Here in New York, it won't be a problem unless there's a federal censorship. Do I actually think that there will be federal censorship? No, but I've been wrong about things before. And that's the thing about being a catastrophist. You're almost always wrong because
Well,
it's either
you've also been right, Scott, because
yeah.
tell everybody a little bit about Mariana's Trench.
Oh, well, I mean, I was not completely right with that, but it was a warning. Mariana's Trench is a play that I wrote that we did True participated in a reading of,
How long
co-produced.
ago did you write it?
I wrote it in 20 I outlined it's part of a trilogy. I outlined the trilogy in 2017 and I wrote the play in 2018. But it is about what happens when the red states secede from the Union and form their own country and the problems associated with that. It was meant to be a cautionary tale, and now it's practically utopian because at least it's only happening to half the country. And it's based on, the division that I had to create was based on, election maps from the 2012 and 2016 presidential elections. You couldn't do that. Use those maps today. It's much, much worse. So in many ways it was optimistic, and in many ways it was pessimistic. But yeah, it's and you get a lot of people, like you say, there are people who are mourning things that other people are cheering, and that does not go state by state. It goes person to person, and there are people, people in red states who are, very who are fighting the good fight and are very upset because they're now in a much more vulnerable position than are going to be in a much more vulnerable position than they already are. I mean, I do have another play that I think is worth mentioning called Playing on the Periphery, and it's actually about it's 7 short pieces that all form one story about LGBTQ third graders, because I knew in the third grade, and this is something that I wrote because it's something that I wanted to see, and it has primarily been done in places like Reading, Kansas City, Missouri, and various parts of Florida. Its entire presentation history has been in red states. And I think that in and of itself, that there are, I mean, it's one thing to like have the New York bubble and the blue state bubble, but it's another thing when there are LGBTQ artists and BIPOC artists and underrepresented artists and underrepresented communities in red states that are devoted to suppressing them. And these are very, very powerful voices with a really tremendous energy. And I think I'm going to disagree with the truism that people have held for a long time that you mentioned, Bob, that everyone is the hero in their own story. They're not vilifying themselves. I think the one thing that we learned from the 45th presidential administration is that when cruelty is the point, some people enjoy being the villain. They enjoy oppressing people for the sake of oppressing them, and they can make a buck off of that oppression as well. I don't think we can, really, be idealistic enough to ignore the fact that there are people in power who enjoy being evil and that they know that what they're doing. And so,
Well, yeah, I mean, I would have a hard time justifying Putin.
exactly, and that's the thing. And I think artistically, I mean, that's I was never writing more prolifically, and some, some might argue better, than when I was really pissed off about the way this country was going. And thank you, fascists. We're going to have that opportunity to make great anti-fascist art again, or just anti-fascist art again that apparently no one's going to listen to. Because I was joking. I'm like, I now know like 1/1000th of how angry Margaret Atwood must be. So
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I do think that the inspiration we can take away from this is that angry artists are prolific, and even if we're creating bad art, we're still creating art that needs to be made just for our own sake, just for our own sanity, and that we can share it with other people and make it better art and maybe make a difference even in small ways.
Well, generally, it's more engaging than debates and fights. So yeah, I mean,
Mm.
I think art has a hugely important function in
And we also need
in
comedies
any
for
culture.
the
In culture now,
yeah.
100 years ago to 100 years from now. It's just the culture, art is basically the footprint of the culture. It's basically it tells us where we've been, where we're going, who we are. And I know not everybody takes on that task as an artist, but to some degree, whether you're trying to or not, you are doing that. Um, a lot of us think that we're just entertaining, but anytime we're writing, we're drawing from something within ourselves, and I think that we're expressing something significant. And what's always interesting is who responds to your work. You're not always, you can't always expect who's going to love it and who's not going to love it. It's just that you write from something within you, and somebody comes up to you at the end of a performance and says, "How did you know about all this? How did you know my life?"
Yeah.
And it's not usually somebody who looks like you.
Yeah.
So-
And not to I mean, there, you cannot underestimate the importance of fluff and just things that are pure entertainment, because those are the things that keep us sane. Like during bleak times, there are two things that I like to watch: things that are utter escapism, and things to paraphrase Carrie Fisher in the opening of Postcards from the Edge. She's looking at or her character is looking at a bombed out train station and thought, wow, now my outsides match my insides. And like when I'm really depressed, I'll watch a Bergman film. It'll even me out. It'll be great. So there you go. So
So
it's all good.
Patrick, you're very much hooked in with the hip hop community. Um, from your experience and from the people that you know, how is your community responding to what's going on?
Um, uh, it very few people that I know are political. They're sort of like the government exists to screw us over, so we're going to ignore it as much as we can.
So they're
And
trying to, so
that's kind
they're not as depressed as we are.
no, and that's kind of my attitude too. It's I'm not as political as some people I know, because ultimately I don't think that a federal government can do very much to anybody that except on the margins. You
Well,
know,
it was a ridiculous concept, but a noble one that any kind of law could actually satisfy the needs of a country as big and as varied as our country. Um, that's
it,
why I
it,
talk about the pendulum. It's like, okay, you're happy now. Do you mind if the pendulum swings in 4 years and I can be happy for a little while?
no, I would be happy if the rest of the country were like California, to be perfectly honest.
Uh,
I wanted to kind of pipe in. I listened to a story this week on public radio about women and the Taliban, right? And now they can no longer even speak in public. Have to be totally covered when they go out. And yet they were interviewing a young woman who continued to twice a week go to a secret house and do Pilates and study. And somehow I think that art has a life of its own. And I agree with Patrick. I don't think that government as a whole um, can really do that much to suppress it. And as you, Bob, the pendulum swings, art will continue to be created. Some more, some less, some hidden, some in public, but ultimately it will reemerge um, as the pendulum swings.
well, to go back to what Margot said, it's basically we're in a situation where the states need to codify some things so they won't be vulnerable to federal laws, that sweeping laws that basically are saying, all of you out there, you have to be like us. I mean, that's what drives me crazy. It's like I don't see me politically saying to right-wing Christians or live life like I do. I mean, I don't care. I mean, live the life you want to live, but just don't don't push me to live the life that you want me to live. I I I, I keep feeling like people are making choices for people. This is brutally evident in the Roe versus Wade aftermath now. There are women who are dying. There are women who are being really horribly treated. And I don't know why people don't have more compassion. Is it compassion? Are we like lacking compassion as a country now?
Well, we're lacking compassion and empathy, and we've had, decades and decades of a large group of the population being told that their way is the one true right way, and anyone who is different from that needs to be the ones to change. And the thing, because when we say, it's like, okay, well, you know what, um, your religion doesn't affect me. When you're looking at it from their point of view, their religion is the religion, and you are wrong. We are all wrong, and they need to make sure that we need to follow in line behind them, or we need to be punished.
It's
I
so
mean,
crazy. It's so
and
crazy because
yeah,
there
but
are
we have to acknowledge that that's the thought process. It's not about, and like you said, nobody thinks they're the villain in their own story necessarily, and I disagree to some extent, but there are a lot of people who know that they are right. I mean, I think like there's a lot of religion, like with in Kabul and the Taliban, the oppression of women is part of, like, this is the natural order of things, and this is what must happen. And for these women to assert themselves in any way, in any expressive way, is actually what they feel is against God, and therefore they must be punished. And it's like, we can't, there's this sort of leftist, live and let live thing that we go through, especially during times like this, where it's like, well, we all have to respect each other's opinions. So we have to respect the right for each other to have opinions. But the thing is that so often we give leeway to people who are trying to oppress us, and in the name of some sort of like fairness or dignity or rising above it, we're allowing people to cut us off at the knees and saying, I've been saying for the past several years, I know how I'm going to die. I'm going to die, in some MAGA firing squad next to some asshole who says, well, at least we didn't sink to their level. And I'm just like, and then my head's going to be, blown off, and my brains are be against the wall. But at least I didn't sink to their level. I would rather sink to their level temporarily and not have to worry about them anymore.
So Scott,
That's
that brings up for me a point, something that was very painful for me, which was I was cheering on Michelle Obama when she was saying when they go low, we go high. And
yeah,
I thought, oh wow, that's the way to be. That's the way to be. And I admired it and I applauded it, and then I regretted it
yeah,
because I realized that going high wasn't really achieving what we wanted it to achieve. It wasn't influencing them. It may have made us feel good, but it wasn't doing anything to change anything. And I think that well, this is getting so political. So
well, you brought it up.
Let me just say something.
yeah,
Some of it is very primitive. From time immemorial, we were to protect the human race. So pregnancy was to be protected at, by all counts. But at the same time, women were trying to abort, from time immemorial too, because it was too difficult to raise a child. They didn't have the money, they didn't have the resources, whatever the reasons were, it was always like this. And it's been like that through the centuries. And I think we're still pretty primitive, and we don't recognize, how much nature informs what we do unless we stop and think it through. And in terms of the arts always tried to clarify or to explain. And when people are frightened, they strike back. And if an idea is revolutionary to them, they get angry. So we're still pretty primitive as human beings, and I think we have a long ways to go. And what happens in times of stress like this, the first thing that happens is that women get told to shut up, to stand back. It was very interesting. I don't know if you saw in the parade yesterday, there was a whole flotilla. There must have been 100 kids. The girls were all in hijabs or whatever that's called. Did you see that marching? Yeah. with their heads covered and everything. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't watch much of the parade.
Yeah,
I confess.
but
Um,
it's still with us.
so Janelle, you have your hand up. So what did you want to add?
Yes, I was going to say it's interesting being in a country other than USA, this close to what has recently occurred in our country, and just the perspective that internationally what just occurred. And it's just very interesting sort of being on the outside looking in. And the thing that's sort of concerning me in comparison is, internationally, people were so invested in our election, really, really, really invested in our election. And I am concerned about sort of the disengagement that's happening in our democracy. And what do we do in order to keep people sort of engaged? Because, this evolution of what we just went through, people are tuning out. And so how as artists do we, kind of keep that flame burning? And, I'm around a lot of political and arts people down here, and they are hoping that we get it right. Like they like like we don't want to think that the USA is not the country that we thought it was. Like, please, like they're begging, like, please, like,
You
they
know,
just, yeah,
Janelle, I think I agree with you, and I don't understand how anybody can't see that what oh God, it's like saying Voldemort. What Trump what Trump is doing is he's trying to really change the basic precepts of our democracy.
yes,
And I don't know how people don't see that that's just what how do I put it? It's like we grew up assuming that our democracy was something sacred and something positive and something, people call it the great experiment. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's flaws in it, but to want to change it, just wrench it right out from under us, and uh, so much of what he's talking about would just change the country that we are in. I mean, it's always been right and left. It's always been Republican, Democrat, or two party, but there's something as deeper that he's trying to shift. He's trying to change, um, and it's terrifying. But again, we keep drifting back into politics, and I want to try to keep us on the art side of it and talk about what the arts can do, what we can do in the arts. I also want to acknowledge Cornelia. She wrote in the chat, if you think the government does not make a difference, see what happens when scientific research is no longer funded, when insurance no longer pays for vaccines, when women can't get reproductive care already happening, when broadcasters lose their licenses, when PBS goes away. Um, yes, these are exactly the fears that we all have, and um, I'm trying to hang on to something. Um, I Next week I actually have a state assemblyman coming in. Robert Carroll is coming in. We're going to talk about politics and art. I mean, next week we're really going to be openly and talking about politics and art and how artists can be political and how they can use their powers and their talents to make changes happen in their country, in their community, and in the world. Um, Today I'm just musing. I'm just musing over what can we do to stay sane, I think is what my subtext is. It's yeah, I want to somehow achieve balance, but I also want to have us all not hide under the covers. I want us all to keep being active and creating art and moving forward in spite of the fact that we know creepy things are happening around us. Um, okay, Scott.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've just regarding like politics and art, it comes down to South Pacific. You have to be carefully taught. When I was a child, and I realized I was gay at the around the age of 10, if not before. And because I do distinctly remember like crushes earlier than that. But I was taught very, very clearly by my father, who didn't know any better, that homosexual men were all rapists and child molesters. So I thought I was going to grow up to be a rapist and child molester before I hit double digits, and I didn't even know what those things were. That is what I was taught as a child. That's what a lot of and people are taught as children from people from adults who have themselves been taught very, very wrong things. And when you're taught a certain thing, you don't really you assume that that's true until you learn that it's different. And I think that art in school, it's one of the reasons why it's the far right suppresses art in school. I think it's because you don't question the things that you're taught. You don't question anything. You're taught certain things are good and certain things are evil. And I think it's really, really great to go into schools and be and really, teach kids about the arts, and to teach about different perspectives and different ways of looking at things. Our arts educators are so important. When I did, I had a play done in Reno, and I was able to teach a class of high school kids a 1 hour like playwriting intensive that was really, really fun. And what was great is that these kids absolutely loved like trying to figure out different ways of expressing themselves and telling their stories and about themselves and about what was going on in their minds. And I think that if we can, part of the solution, I think, is to really encourage that sort of artistic expression and thought, and to challenge people to think, well, you think this is wrong. Why is it wrong? Why does that person think it's right? And to really get those intellectual and artistic and creative balls rolling.
Margot, what
Well,
would you like to say to the women in our country now? What can we do? What is there anything we can do other than move to states that don't prohibit women's rights? And
I think what I would say is don't try to go it alone. Try to find other people to help that you can work with. Because in a situation like this, if you are trying to stand up for something by yourself with bullies facing you, they'll take advantage. So I think if you believe in an art form, or you believe in reproductive rights, or whatever it is, try to find like-minded people to help each other. That's what I would say. Don't try to be alone right now.
like-minded people, yeah, like I think we're like-minded for the most part in this room. I would hope.
Yeah.
And if I'm wrong, whoever is thinking, oh, I don't agree with all the things you're saying. That's fine. That's fine that you don't agree with all the things that we're saying. I still would like to have you part of our community and have you part of the artistic community. Michael DiCatano, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, and sadly I have to leave a bit early tonight, but I have my play location has two transgender characters in it. And I'm expecting there's going to be some controversy because of what's going on politically, but I'm like, you know what? Fuck you. This is my show. And I'm going to do my show. And if you want to picket it or protest it or whatever, fine. I'm not going to bend to the current trend of that was an accidental rhyme uh, of what's going on. I'm just going to write what I believe in and let the cards fall where they may. We can't cave in. We can't also be 24/7 worried about what's going to happen. We have to be creative and we have to be smart. We have to be careful.
So, okay, so given the fact that there's a possibility that censorship might happen in our country in the next couple of years, we should choose not to think about that and just be where we are now and express ourselves now and change people's thinking or help have people understand the things that we're trying to express now. And let's we can hope that we won't be in a country of censorship. But I know Cornelia has some doubts about that. So Cornelia, you need to unmute yourself.
We might see the exact opposite of what we're fearing. We might see an artistic flourishing. And the reason I say this is because many years ago, I sat on a bus out to the airport with a very distinguished looking Latin American gentleman. And he'd just come from New York where he'd received a big prize at the National Arts Club. I never got his name at the time. We had a long talk, and I had just had my first musical produced. And he asked me what it was about, and he was somewhat dismissive. And he said, is that, are you saying something important? And he said that he felt that Americans had not suffered through any kind of opposition, especially governmental opposition, and that American artists hadn't, so that we were not creating anything at the time, and this was in the 90s, that was significant politically as artists. And I did not get his name, but later on, I checked to see who had gotten an award at the National Arts Club that week, and it was Gabriel Garcia Marquez. And that's who I'd been sitting next to for an hour, talking about the purpose of art. And I always remembered that because, it seemed to me that, he was able, in opposition to the government, to create great art. And I think that we may be able to do it too. And it might not necessarily be overtly in opposition, but I think we might find ways to create that we have not anticipated.
Yay, subversive.
Yay, yeah,
Let's hear from subversive.
Yeah, because I think it's not that we can't obsess over the possibility of censorship, but I don't think there's a moment where we should ever not be aware of the possibility. And I think that's absolutely right. That the threat of suppression and censorship and the act of suppression and censorship tends to incense more people to be louder and to tell these stories. And Americans. Because of our history and our demographics, I think that's probably true. What he said, where we as a nation don't have that experience that smaller nations might, but our populations do. Just like the queer plays and like the black plays and it's suppressed groups really create art. I have a friend of mine who is a queer playwright. He says, I've never written a political play in my life. And I said, any queer story that you write is a political story. Yeah, because you are, it could be the most vanilla domestic thing ever. And you are in that moment fighting for, people like you to live quiet lives. And I think that we as populations understand that. We as a nation, maybe not so much. So that's a very interesting perspective.
So Ned Ginsburg, why don't you voice for us what you put into the chat so we can hear you?
Well, I just wanted to bring it back to the subject of gratitude, and it's been my observation that there's been a plethora of new plays and musicals that have made their way to American stages, and I mean not just in New York, but across the country, and many of them touch upon new topics and involve a lot of more and more diverse communities. So to me, the musical theater feels more vibrant now than it did 3 or 4 years ago. And so I think there's a certain cause for celebration in that. And so, even though the odds are still, it's very hard to put on new work, I still see a lot happening out there.
And there's a lot that you don't see that is also happening, because what we're aware of really are the higher profile productions. We're aware of Broadway. We're aware to a degree of off Broadway and regional theaters. But there is independent theater. There's small theaters that are presenting works constantly. I don't know what we're up to now, but I remember pre-COVID, in an average Broadway season, there would be about 60 plays that were commercially produced on Broadway, and there would be 1,000 to 1,200 plays that were being produced by independent
Wow.
companies. The workshops and showcases, like it was over 1,000 every year. So there's a lot happening that we are aware of, and there's a lot more happening that is a little bit under the radar. And I think the under the radar situation is probably advantageous if you want to be political and not get arrested in a couple of years. Um, the thing that we always try to emphasize is that Broadway is not the only destination for our work. So Tita, did you want to bring up what you had put in the chat so you can share that with us?
Sure. But first, I'll show you something that I'm grateful for. Anyway, yeah, I just was curious that those are my sons.
Oh,
One from LA and one from New York. Come with dog from LA. Anyway, I was wondering if you did a round robin of your board or anybody else of what they are doing or what they think they can do to support democracy during this time. More than nothing. It doesn't have to be big, but at least more than nothing.
I'll start with that. Basically what I do is I have conversations. I do these things every week. I feel like the one thing I know I can do is get people to talk about things. And I think that's useful. Sandy, how about you?
Well, one, stay informed, and two, engage with people of opposite views to try and understand where they're coming from and find common ground. Because as long as they are the other, we're in trouble. But when we find common ground, we can make some progress.
I agree, and I also don't think that we can always find common ground, but it's a great ambition. It's a great goal.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be politically. It has to be common ground, right? Because politics will take a step back if you find the things that you have in common as human beings.
Margot, how about you? Any thoughts?
You mean to sum up what I think about this discussion?
Well, no, as Tita was saying, she wanted to know what people would say if what can we do, or what are you doing that you think is going to be in some way, in some small way or some large way, influencing and making things a little bit better right now.
But one thing I'm doing is trying to pick projects, that state a message and that are direct. I mean, I don't know how to explain this. For instance, The Outsiders that I'm involved with talks about things that exist as much today as they did in 1967. I'm trying to pick projects that speak to us now directly, not things, that might be or could have been, because theater helps people to find direction, and I hope that I can contribute to that in some way.
Okay, how about you, Patrick?
Vote. The election turned out the way it did this time because so many people who voted last time didn't vote this time. And that's the difference in the election. People who voted for Biden stayed home.
Scott.
So what can you do as a producer of hip hop to kind of make that not happen next time?
Yeah, and also along those lines, Patrick, you also said that your community basically tries to be chooses to be apolitical. Do you think that's the way it needs to be?
Well, if your only experience with the government has been a cop beating your head with a nightstick, you tend to try and avoid the government as much as possible. And that's pretty much the experience. I mean, I am a privileged white old guy. So I have not had any kind of experience remotely resembling the people that I have come to know over the last few years since I've been involved in hip hop. And their experience is totally different from mine. And I'm learning to understand it.
How will that change? How can that change?
But when I was in college, I had a lot of gay friends because I was in theater, and they told me not to tell anybody. People couldn't get married if you were of a different race. The Griswold versus Connecticut had just happened, where a woman could have used birth control without her husband's permission. So many things have changed that this little blip, 4-year blip, probably 2-year blip, when the next election rolls around, people are getting upset about it, and it's bad, but it's not, it's temporary. And so much in my lifetime, there has been so much positive change that I just can't get too excited about what's happened in the last election.
I would love to embrace that. I'm not.
I mean, I know friends
it feels different. This just feels different.
Oh, it is different.
When a man convicted of 39 felonies is elected to be president of the United States, we've never had that before.
No. Who's the successor to him, though? There isn't anybody, and the reason he was successful is because he was involved in entertainment. He got his name with the country because of The Apprentice. Nobody has that kind of recognition nationwide, and I think he's a one-off.
Okay. Scott, your turn.
Just on that topic, and then I'll go back to politics and me. I think it's important to remember that there was a 1,000-page document outlining how this is going, that the current plan is to turn the democracy into an autocracy, and it was very detailed and incredibly realistic. And the thing so one of the things I'm thankful for right now is extremely thin congressional majorities. And the thing standing between us and the Project 2025 takeover is the fact that Congress, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, is not willing to give up its authority. It's like, oh, you want to minimize the legislative branch. Well, the legislative branch doesn't want to be minimized. So not even the Republicans want that particular aspect of it. But I also think I don't look at this as a 4-year or 2-year blip. People, whenever I hear someone says, well, you know what, the next 4 years, I'm thinking, what do you think is going to happen in 4 years? A free and fair election? That's adorable. But yeah, I'm thinking of this as a potentially permanent state until proven otherwise. And like I said, I'm a catastrophist. I'm frequently wrong. I am begging to be proven wrong about this. I'm hoping it's happened, and I hope that Patrick, that you are absolutely right, and I am pulling for that reality. As for politics, to me, what the conundrum is that I'm a dissident artist, apparently. So I'm writing the plays that I mentioned before. I've written other political plays, full-length, short ones. Some of them are actually done in small venues, and that's the thing about like a lot of people writing and trying to put on political plays. And yes, it's great to have them done in the small venues and little theaters around the country. But we always, at least I always question, like, how much good is that doing? Am I out there? Is my work out there preaching to the smallest choirs in America who already agree with it? And every now and then, you are lucky to have someone come to your show and say, I didn't look at it that way. the best compliment I ever got is someone saw that the aforementioned Ian Forster play and said to me, I had a friend who came out, and he was married and he had left his wife and children to live a gay lifestyle, and we all condemned him for that. And now that I saw your play, I realized that could not have been easy for him. I will never get a better compliment than that from anyone, because it's like, oh my God, I actually did make a difference to one person. And I'm wondering, to what extent, how can we as artists continue to make that difference? And I'm wondering how I can, as an artist, can make that difference, and how I, as an artist, can help other people make that difference to get our political plays out there even more, especially now that they're under threat of suppression. So that's one of the things I'm trying to work on.
I'm going to bring everybody else into the room right now. And guys, you can turn on your cameras.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and
Oh,
because I want you to also say what is it you feel like. Tita, ask your question again and ask it to the room this time, and let's see if anybody has any answers.
Okay, what is each of us thinking that we can do that's more than nothing, doesn't have to be big, to strengthen democracy at this time? I'm, for example, writing a play for high school students that only talks about bullies and how to beat them, but it's based on Timothy Snyder's Yale professor's 20 examples of fascism and how to counter it. But I won't ever use the word because they'll ban it.
Right. Anybody have an answer you'd like to share?
I have an answer.
Okay, Karen.
Hi, thank you for turning on my camera. First of all, I wanted to share a quote from Picasso that I really love, that harks back to some things you were talking about earlier. And that quote is, art wipes away from the soul the dust of everyday life. And I think when I think about art and the work that we're doing, theater, I think we offer something different. We offer a refuge. We offer people a place where they can go for a while and sort of not escape from everyday life exactly, but see another dimension of what life is like. And I think that's really important.
And sometimes it is escape, and that's perfectly good.
Yeah, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
We need to escape. We all need to escape sometimes.
God knows.
And yeah,
love to escape.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in a nightmare right now, but
Yeah.
I'm trying not to.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be positive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Candy Carl, you have your hand up.
Yes, one of the things that I've decided to do is create a one-woman show, produce it, and on Isabella Beecher Hooker, who was Harry Beecher Stowe's half-sister, and she and her lawyer husband managed to pass in the state of Connecticut Women's Property Act, using historic as opposed to hot-button contemporary to shed light on what people struggle to achieve, and well, we could do it too, kind of thing, is where I feel my strengths are. So that's where I'm going to try and create a positive look and see where we've been and what happened to women in the past. And do you really want to see their struggles again?
Yeah. I just want to jump in because I have a play about Sojourner Truth, that a young Sojourner Truth and her fight to rescue her son after he was sold down south. And it's based on a true story. And I'm looking to take it. One of the things we're trying to do is, get an off-Broadway run of the play. But I'm also looking to take it to high schools and also colleges and universities, because they don't know the story. They do not know the story of her.
So these are ways of talking about what's going on. So basically what many of us are agreeing on is that it's more useful, it's more positive for us to talk about what's happening rather than hide ourselves
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
I know my first impulse is to hide myself away.
Yeah.
But no,
Mhm.
I come on with you guys and we talk about these things, and I think sometimes we are pretty direct about it, and hopefully I think we're all being honest and genuine. Um,
Mhm.
this is going to be, I'm not sure whether I'm going to post this on YouTube or not, but in the event that it is posted, I want to just say to the YouTube audience and to the podcast audience that we're Theater Resources Unlimited, and we're a not-for-profit organization. We're an arts service organization that's dedicated to helping people in theater, specifically producers, but also artists and self-producing artists. We've been doing it for 32 years. And if you'd like to be part of the community and be part of the conversations, just email me at trunltd@aol.com. That's, give me a second. I'm going to do this. Okay, so now you got me full screen. So email me at trunltd@aol.com, trunltd@aol.com, and we would welcome you to be part of the community. The only thing that we require is a love of art and a love of theater, or even a like of it, a like of art and a like of theater. Hope to see you all next week. We're going to have a actual political conversation about art and politics. Then we're going to be having New York State Assemblyman Robert Carroll coming in. We're going to talk about things from a slightly different perspective. We're going to talk about things that actually are being done right now. That he has bills on the floor that are hopefully going to be approved, that are going to be helpful for the arts. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to have Beowulf Borrit, who is supposed to be with us in November, and he's a Tony-winning set designer. He lost his voice on November, I think it was 8th. So he's coming back on December 13th. And then there'll be more things that I'll be planning for the rest of December into January 2025. If you'd like to support the work that we do, go to TRU Donate, trudonate.com, trudonate.com. Donations are always welcome. We are coming off of a relatively successful benefit that we did last week, and I'm very proud of the work that we did and the people that we honored. And it was a great show, and I think people had a great time. And I also, the day after our benefit, I found out that NISCA, New York State Council on the Arts, had given us a $25,000 grant. So we are very grateful for very many things. And even though I'm in an emotional state because of what's going on in the world, I do have hope, and I do cling to hope, and I do try to keep my thoughts positive, and try to make this a positive environment for people to come and share their thoughts and learn things about theater. Um, so that would be it for our community gathering. Hope to see you all in the weeks to come.